Draft science video. Yeah, there's still some more of this Piro room thing to get through, and Vic Mackey makes comments. They just, so I say, yeah, well, it's worth responding to because some of it is just so, it's just words, and it's just really easy to say something and then, say something else, and then those two statements have nothing to do with each other, just conflict each other. And those kind of things are just it's just so sloppy. Let me just put it that way. So he says a few things in here earlier that I didn't play before. I'm just remembering that are like examples of that. But in here he says something like, well, even if Gary convinced me of all this stuff, this is the same guy saying he's an imbecile, so there's no chance of this. And so why do you even speculate about that possibility? That's sort of a subtle what? And then somehow that's not proof of something. And of course it really just depends on the something, doesn't it? I mean, there's no real imagination you can apply to say evolution isn't true, or the flat earth kind of bullshit. Obviously there's certain truths, sun's on fire or something, that there's a level of confidence because there's just no way to imagine it any other way. And then there's other things you believe because, well, it's the best theory I have, or it's too complicated and I'll just trust somebody else's word. They'll tell me what to believe because I'm too lazy to figure it out for myself or something like that. But yeah, there's complex truths and simple ones, and then there's well-established evidence, volumes of evidence, redundancies in evidence, cross checks or whatever you want to call them, evidence that verifies each other. And so it's just kind of silly to have a conversation without acknowledging that there's a depth to evidence. And that's sort of the whole Einstein thing, is that when you analyze it, the depth of the evidence was really thin. The theory got credibility for reasons that didn't even have anything to do with really the substance of the theory, the relativity, the bent space metaphor, all that kind of stuff just got carried with, the aspect that, well, if one piece is right, all the pieces are right, kind of a thing. So because he got the lensing thing supposedly right, all the rest was presumed right, kind of thing. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but I just mean that's part of what gave Einstein the floor to argue, at least, for his vision. To tell the story and see if he could get it accepted. And you do from in hindsight, there's a little bit of a lack of credibility there. So I just thought I'd throw that in on the lensing subject. Is that it's not so much about the fact that there's lensing kind of where there shouldn't be. It's almost more about the fact that there isn't lensing where there should be. Something like that. There's problems with where they found it, and there's the bigger problem, I'd almost argue, is that it isn't where they should be finding it. Tons of gravity in the universe, exploitable for this purpose, if this purpose exists, if this function exists. And clearly with the advances in technology, I can keep saying it, but I mean, the Hubble telescope really should be able to use the sun to diffract the light from every star that falls or rises from its edge. Anyway, okay. So the other thing he said here, well, anyway, that the evidence conversation is kind of a deep one. You can really get into, what standards we should have for when we declare something to be okay. We can all just, let's use that as a foundation, all establish that everything else we say is built on that being a truth. And I guess I'm arguing that physics has made a few mistakes, wave theory and bent space and time dimensions, that were bad premises, bad axioms, and they aren't a foundation to build on. These are not accurate. So anyway, okay, so that's one little piece of thing. He's also argued that it'd be nice if I argued with a real physicist, which is sort of an insult to the people in the room, in a sense, almost arguing that all these people who have argued with me have suck at it. He's sort of conceding that no one's poked a hard hole, and so it's another subtle. He's deriding and insulting me, but in the sense he's making the obvious concession that I'm winning the argument, at least in this arena. And yeah, so it's just kind of funny. I mean, he doesn't have the balls, I guess, to say overtly to Piro, you suck at making a reasonable counter-argument. You suck at proving imbeciles to be imbeciles. He's not supposed to be an imbecile. I mean, that's Vick's premise. Alright. So yeah, I guess we can just start playing this, because this next point is one of those kind of points. It's just kind of well, that's kind of a dumb thing to say.
Have an education. Get down from the phone. And I know more than you.
Alright. Hey, now that bit of...
Some biologists do that.
Yeah, tell me what you know. You don't know anything about
Mr. Natural, anyway, let's get away from this.
Oh yeah? Tell me what you know about biology.
One moment. I did something in your field that had to do with grafting, and you can go look it up. Okay?
What was it?
Back in the 70s, I was the guy who took the marijuana plant and grafted it to the.
Yeah, it's the only. Yeah, it's just sort of is a. To have your life built around the marijuana plant, but whatever.
Root of a hops, and then I got the two to grow together, and then I made hops marijuana, and then we turned that into beer, and we created marijuana beer, which we put out from 1970 until about 1990. So you can go look that up. Science.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You can go. I don't know if it's marijuana beer if it doesn't have THC in it, right? Because you weren't selling that legally.
Actually, that is a little bit impressive, I will admit.
And that's your field.
Yeah, I've never heard about it because I'm not a hippie.
So, you're calling Mr. Natural a hippie?
Well,
Yeah.
Well, even that statement, you're calling Mr. Natural a hippie. Well, yeah, I mean, he's sort of the definition of a hippie. It's like the poster child for the word hippie. Yeah, it's perfectly irrational to call Mr. Natural a hippie, for fuck's sake.
Thank you. No, I started it. I'm the hipposaurus. I'm the oldest living hippie still around. I'm the hipposaurus, man.
So,
Hipposaurus.
That way, hippie.
So
Mr. Natural, I think a little bit of humility is like necessary here. I mean, I know you said that
And where does Vick demonstrate any of that ever? Oh, that's right. Never
you
mind.
watch all of you agree with most of what Gary says, and it's irrelevant. Like even if I watch all of Gary,
Right. So it's irrelevant that he makes a good argument, because that's basically what agreement would be. Is that your counter theory? Okay, so you have two theories. Space is bent and it's pushing material objects. The empty space is applying force. It's not real. Dimensional force. And moving things. Big things. Alright, you have a counter theory that, no, there's really a real force and it's very much like magnetism and electricity, the other forces we know, made of basically the same thing. They happen to be made of the force. And it's actually a thing. It's actually a moving, active thing happening in this dimensional universe. And you explain how it fits all of the equations and all of that kind of stuff. And you have a choice. And you're convinced. That doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. Evidence is irrelevant. Evidence of things like consistency and puzzle fits, empty spot. You're connecting the dots and they actually look like something. Irrelevant.
Videos, and I completely agree with everything he says. I would have the humility to admit and understand that just because I agree with it, because of my limited knowledge and understanding of physics, it doesn't matter whether I agree with it. What matters?
Okay, so if it doesn't matter what you agree with, then why are you arguing or advocating in defense of a bunch of stuff you believe that may not be true? It's just a hypocrisy. If belief doesn't mean anything, if no belief is credible or based on reasoning, then why are you advocating that there's lensing or there's this or there's that? Why? The Pope says so? You just said that's irrelevant. What the Pope believes is irrelevant. What Susskind believes is irrelevant. What Feynman believes is irrelevant.
Is whether the people with the expertise agree.
Well, again, the expertise in what? Being wrong? Experts on God? I mean, it's just kind of silly. Again, if you want to say that there's no such thing as foundational knowledge, and then you could almost argue that everybody's equal. Yeah, somebody can have more knowledge, but really you have to have the foundational knowledge. You can make some kind of arguments about from what place you have to have some knowledge of. But to say that Dawkins is the only person who can do evolution because he wrote the selfish gene and nobody else can really understand it like him or something would be kind of, in my opinion, silly. I think it's silly.
With it, what they think about it.
Yeah, so again, it doesn't matter what the actual evidence is. It matters on how somebody else thinks, not how you process reality, and whether or not you have some sort of rational standard for what constitutes proof. Like, well, there's a black guy running away. It must be he's the guy who did whatever the problem is. If something's on fire and a black guy ran away, well, that's the black guy did it. You can logically know that's not good enough. Well, everybody but Vic could know that.
Most people with expertise are never going to see Gary's video.
So now, Mr. Natural.
Most people with expertise are never going to see Gary's videos. Well, again, nobody read Einstein's paper, right? Until some guy, went out and kind of fucked up an experiment, and came up with the results. And, it got written up in the New York Times, and that's all you really need, do you? Right? So, that didn't happen, and no one's ever going to read Einstein.
True. Yes, it's true. It's true that there are a lot of questions. Hold on. There are a lot of questions in science, like the dark matter. That's why we call it dark matter, because we don't know what it is.
No, they call it dark matter because it's not on fire, asshole. Not because we don't know what it is. Shit. It's invisible and you can't bend it, you can't reflect light off of it. It's non-reflective and it produces no radiation. It's invisible. That's why it's called dark, is because when you look into it in space, it's dark up there. And the dark matter looks just like the dark.
Leo, please, we know what. Can we take turns? So we don't know what all these things are. So
well, again, we know what dark matter is that it's a contrivance. Right now, it's a piece of imagination. It's a cartoon character drawn on the images. It really has absolutely no definable substance at all, except as a story. It's a fairy tale character so far. It has just very little anything connected to reality, except that we need more people in the scene, and they just drew more people in the scene. We need more gravity. Well, we'll just pretend there's some sort of thing that doesn't do anything else but make gravity. You can't in any other way interact with it except that it makes gravity, because that's what we want. Invisible people that make the boat sink lower in the water or something.
Holes in our scientific knowledge, but that is not mean that anybody in their living room can just come up with their own.
Right, okay, so anybody in their living room, again, that just presumes they didn't do any work to acquire any knowledge, or that they didn't have a history in engineering or a history in science, to some extent. I mean, you know, I lived working with products as they evolved. You know, the first lasers, you know, as diodes, were $40 a piece and burned up in 2 hours. Solar panels. I mean, I can go through all the things that were made or made practical. It went through the process of becoming practical right before my eyes. The integrated circuit is one of them. I watched it develop as I was soldering it into onto boards. Retard. To say I'm sitting in a living room, you know, watching movies or something. You know, to use that kind of rhetoric as if somebody doesn't have any qualifications because they're in a living room is just more of your knee-jerky, pigeon-holey cheat of an argument.
Own little pet theory.
Okay, own little pet theory. Again, what does this statement even mean? Own little pet theory. Is that what Einstein's thing is? His own little pet theory? You know, that's what we should have just called it right from the beginning. Everybody just say, hey, just call it his own little pet theory and ignore it. Well, that's what they did do until some event happened. Now, do you think that's good? Do you think it's good that the system didn't care about Einstein either? That that assholes like you kind of ensure that nothing gets heard? That there's nothing challenged in the establishment? That your dogma, you're the one with dogma, right? You're the one with dark matter, you know, things made up that there's no evidence for, that you're just going to state as a premise of your science. Where's your bucket full of bent space? Where's your proof of the existence of the bent space-time dimension? Besides the fact that it creates a parallel to what we know to be true. Well, there's other theories that are parallel to what we know is true. They're perfectly consistent with it. And these other pet theories might do more things more accurately and therefore have more credibility. Stupid fuck.
And pass it off as a scientific theory.
Alright, pass it off as a scientific theory. Right, it's passed off with an argument that includes the evidence for why it's pretty good stuff to pass off. That as a theory, it's quite passable. But just ignore that. As if somebody just said, I think this is, you know, I can't even describe it because it's like, what you're arguing is that there's nothing, but there is something, and I guess I would argue that there's something more substantial than, you know, bent dimensions, and theory that depends on you doing experiments you can't do at the speed of light. Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it does. What it does is that there's a competition. You can't just pass something off. You have to argue it. But you're not arguing it, you're just dismissing it. You know, that's all. So you're just an advocate for dismissal. Routine dismissal. I'll apply no judgment, and I'll just dismiss it because I don't like it, because it's not my pet theory. I like this theory, and you're not going to be able to explain why you like it exactly, or why it is superior, which is probably the more relevant argument. Where have you made the argument why a theory that unifies is inferior to one that doesn't?
Right?
Scientists are aware. That is pretty much how it works.
No.
Yeah, it is. So here the hypocrisy I wanted to point out was, I mean, Einstein was a patent clerk, for fuck's sake. So you could argue that he had some skills in science, but clearly he didn't have enough skills to get a decent recommendation to get a teaching position, so that's why he was working as a patent clerk. So, you know, yeah. Defeat your own argument.
It isn't. In
Yes,
real
scientists-
science,
Most science sit at home having a cup of coffee, or I have a friend who drinks a Susskind, likes to drink a little bit of wine to loosen up his mind.
Yeah, well, whatever he... you know, you could go on and on about some of those subjects, right? I mean, but I'm just saying, you know, Susskind definitely knows physics. He's a good physicist in a lot of ways, but I mean, information? I mean, come on. Holograms?
And then he sits in his room at his desk, and he just thinks and he thinks and he thinks. Then sometimes he pulls out a pencil and a piece of paper, and he does a little math.
and then what do?
You
do?
and-
They
you and
try to
Sus
prove
kind
it,
of
right?
friends.
They come up with predictions and experiments and ways to do.
Well, again, predictions and experiments, in many ways, they have to be thought experiments, and they have to be, you know, that's all Einstein had, you know, mostly. That's all he relied on. And then when you actually you attempt to do some of these experiments, they are so difficult to do without pushing a bunch of presumptions into the mechanism of the experiment. We can do this, we can time that, we can know this. And all those statements are, they do more damage to your science. Those misunderstandings of your own limitation to do experiments is very dangerous. That's why you have lensing images that are incoherent to fundamental physics. It's for that very reason. You're calling it a valid experiment when it should be discounted as a valid experiment because first it's not repeatable, the lensing images, and it's fundamentally in conflict with the rules of physics.
Disprove their ideas, stuff like that.
No,
If you're not doing all of that, then you're not.
Well, again, I am doing all of that. I'm arguing why the Huygens principle isn't a valid principle, because you can't apply it anywhere but to one circumstance. So you can't call that a principle. You know, if you're only, it's like dark matter. Again, if you inject dark matter to create lensing, then you have to account for the fact that you created gravity, and then you have to recalculate the dynamics of the system you injected that dark matter into, and then figure out or explain how you didn't just create more gravity than the evidence indicates exists there. Because if there was more gravity there, that thing would be collapsing.
Not really doing science.
Okay.
In one example, he spent 30 years arguing with Hawkins about whether Hawkins was right or not about black holes, and he proved that Hawkins was wrong.
Yeah, well,
And he did that with
see that whole crap about proving something. I don't know if I think they're both full of shit. So I mean, you know, that's just more example of, you know, how could somebody do this worse than they're doing it? Yeah, I'm just going to argue that, you know, they've gotten so many things wrong, and they've got so many gimmicks built into their math and the mechanism. I'm just, you know, in hindsight, this is going to be like, well, why did we even have to have this conversation? Because, yeah, there's two guys arguing about whether God has a beard. And these people that are supposed to be smart couldn't just say, there's no God, fucker, so what are you arguing about whether he has a beard or not, you retards?
Pencil and paper over 30 years.
Yeah, but it wasn't just ad hoc speculation in his mind.
So ad hoc speculation in his mind. What does that mean? Ad hoc, like what? You're inspired by the fact that somebody's theorizing that there's a God and he sends you to snake hell or something, or whatever the thing is, and if you do the right thing, he allows you to molest children. And you say, boy, that sure sounds stupid. Maybe there's a better theory than that. Oh, gee, what a horror. That's the last thing you want people to do on Earth, is think.
That's correct, but it took 30 years for him to do the math. He had the idea first, and then he did the math and found out he was right.
Yeah, well, he found out whatever. They did the math on the false presumptions that you can create infinite gravity. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that math comes from.
Okay, but that's real science. I'm not disputing that that's...
Okay, that's real science. So you fake dimensions and infinite energy sources, that's real science. And somebody who says, well, maybe we ought to migrate the subject off of God and move it to evolution. Yeah, let's get to something a little more practical to argue.
Science. I'm disputing what Gary is doing as science.
Right, disputing it based on what? You don't like it. You don't like it. You like something else better. But you're not making anything called an argument attacking the damn fucking theory. You're just attacking Gary. It's just such a bogus sack of shit argument, you sack of shit.
He will admit that he's going to do an experiment now to prove that he's right.
I'm not admitting any such thing. I'm just saying that there's certainly experiments that can be composed. I'm saying we probably have the technology now to aim a photon. So yeah, let's just end the controversy over the two-slit experiment and let's just shoot the damn photons. Let's aim them. Let's know where they went ahead of time, and then you don't have to worry about Heisenberg. And I'll guarantee you that the photons you shoot right by the edge are going to diffract like hell, and the ones that you shoot right in the middle of the slit are going to diffract the least. And when you add it all up, if you shoot the light exactly proportional to how many openings in the slit there are, that in the end you're going to get exactly the same pattern. But you'll know exactly what slit the light went through.
He has a whole
I mean, there's lots of experiments. There's just the point is that experiments nowadays, you're a lot of this stuff, it's physics, for fuck's sake. You need some technology to do valuable experiments, because all the ones that are easy to do have already been done. I mean, lighting candles, everybody's done that one already. I mean, I can't just light a candle and do an experiment.
He has a holographic idea of the black hole or the universe, which I personally don't agree with, and we've had personal arguments in class about this. And I'm just saying,
Gary
has this idea about a holographic universe.
We're comparing Gary to a professional in the field.
Okay, we're comparing Gary to a professional in the field. Again, theoretical physics, for fuck's sake. And the professionals are saying things like, every time, let's see, we need to explain this. So, well, what if every single time something bangs into something else, a new universe is created? Yeah, then we don't have to account for anything, because then we can say everything happens. And, we don't have to take any responsibility for any kind of anything, because now we can have everything possibly possible. Yeah, well, that's what the professionals are doing. So, frankly, you might as well just say they're professional, shove dildos in their ass. But I don't think they're very professional as physicists. I think they're pretty professional as cartoonists and religious kooks, but I don't think they really think in terms of physical phenomenon. That's why they keep making extra dimensions and everything, because they can't do physics. They can't figure out how to explain anything in 3 dimensions of physics. So they have to keep making fake things to make things happen. Because they can't do physics. I can do physics. I can make the universe happen in 3 dimensions. I don't need a whole bunch of extra ones.
I wasn't a professional.
And again, what makes somebody what makes somebody qualified? These assholes are basically arguing that if you go to medical school and you learn, what the elbow is connected to, the blah blah and all that kind of shit, and you learn all this Latin shit and you learn all this other bullshit, all those details are really, really important. And it doesn't really matter that what you really did is you kind of had a mechanical mind. And yes, you studied all the raw anatomy, you knew where all the parts were, and then you did lots and lots and lots of operations and figured out how to sew really well and keep the blood flowing, and you figured out how not to compress the veins or the arteries. You made yourself some tools. If you did that, if you're self-taught, you have no credibility. That's all they're saying. So the fact that I spent most of my life fixing things, I worked as a mechanic, I worked in a machine shop making things. I helped build, engineered robotic devices, and but none of that matters. And then I spent a whole pile of years, again, fixing things, fixing mechanically broken things, which is basically physics, for fuck's sake. You have to know how hot something's going to get. And you have to know how energy is transferred. And you have to know how much heat a wire can take. And you have to know lots and lots of physics. So somehow, but that's not qualified. That doesn't qualify you to understand anything. Or to have a conversation. I'm saying quite obviously I'm qualified to have the conversation because none of you assholes who are saying I'm unqualified can come up with a single structural sentence debunking or proving me wrong on anything I've said.
Still in the field for 50 years before I dropped out to teach music.
Mr. Natural, so has Gary come up with predictions for his model that we could find to corroborate what he's saying, or we could search for?
Yeah, I'm predicting you can't bend light, with gravity. That one's looking like a winner. I'm predicting you can't. I'm predicting gravity is not in some kind of space dimension, space-time dimension, and that you certainly can't convert 3 solar masses into some kind of space thing that isn't some sort of particle force. I'm predicting whatever. What else do I need? Again, this whole obsession that describing reality requires prediction. Where did you get that from? The theory of evolution is dependent on predictions? Darwin made predictions? No, he pointed out how the evidence, the facts, point to correlations. That's what I'm doing. I'm showing the evidence points to correlations. This is connected to that, is connected to that, is connected to that, and when you add up all of those things, it points to one thing. That's all I'm doing. So, but you make the rules of what logic is and how we logically deduce the world we live in. And so you've declared the only thing that has any value is a prediction because somehow you want to invest in it in the stock market or something. Because you can't think about it. It's really about describing reality. It's not about you buying stock. Fucking myopic, ignorant cunt.
Has he come up with experiments that would disprove it if we found this to be...
Yeah, I've only pointed them out. Yeah, the Hubble telescope right now can look at the edge of the sun and the whole field of the universe will go right past it, and it should be able to lens the fuck out of every one of the fucking stars that goes behind the sun and then pops out on the other side. Every single fucking one of them. It should be diffracted if the sun has the capacity to gravitationally bend light.
true, then his theory would be false.
Has he proposed
Any
any
of
experiments at all?
Yeah, I have. 2 slit experiments with aimed photons. Yes, aim the photons, no problem. Because stop randomly throwing things at the slit and throw things at the slit aimed. So if you use bingy balls or whatever, even if you use these bigger shits, you can't aim an electron, so it's just no point. I mean, you can't use something that's overtly strongly charged, because even if you aim it, you already know it's not going where you aimed it. Charge doesn't do that.
Yeah.
The first premise of this theory: the entire universe is made of photons and nothing else.
Okay.
Does anyone want to debate that?
Yes. How can
No,
you make a
please,
photon?
Please debate it.
Oh, please, with him, please, come on. He doesn't know anything.
No, how can it be made of
What was the step 2?
You go to Harvard.
Wait, I'm confused.
What was step 2, Mr. Natural?
Yeah, well, look, there was only one reason why a particle gravity didn't work, and that was the Feynman debunk reason that somehow it creates an ether, and now every time anything moves through the universe, it's going to hit more of this force. So if you create a force, an ether, a stagnant or a moving thing in the universe, that somehow it makes the universe a fluid, and now the fluid creates friction. So I've clearly, using simple kinetic principles, explained why in pure kinetics that doesn't happen. The little metal ball swinging. In pure kinetics, all right, there is no friction when things head-on collide. The universe doesn't lose anything. There's no heat. There's no any of that in pure kinetics. So therefore, there's no problems with something moving through the field as long as it is taking in as much as it gives out, as long as it obeys conservation rules of momentum.
I have to go to sleep because I'm moving. I've got a lot of packing to do. I'll leave the room open. I'll just leave.
I used to work as a mover, so I can give you tips.
And I want to say one thing though. I think, for example, a lot of people, Gary's fans, when I go, hey, I understand what you mean, Gary, they'll later on tell me how, well, you admitted Gary was right. Understanding someone.
Yeah, whatever. That is just so fucking useless, alright? It's an argument about an explicit truth, and you just keep fucking talking out of both sides of your fucking snaky face. Alright? You're a forked-tongue motherfucker. You admit things as being valid. You don't just say, well, I understand. No. You concede points that, yes, okay, that evidence is... And then you argue the very next day something differently. So this is just... First, this is a bullshit evasion of your inconsistency and your duplicity. And second, if you think it's rational for people to go around and just say things like, I understand... That's a brilliant debate tactic, right? Well, why don't we have a debate of politics, and we can the politicians can make accusations to each other, and then they can just go, I understand. Fuck you.
Not mean you think they're right. It means that, and this goes for how I look at all of everybody's ideas here.
Yeah, exactly. Everything you say doesn't mean anything. It doesn't stand for anything. The fact that I say okay, that doesn't mean okay. It just means I'm not paying any attention anymore. I didn't pay any attention from the beginning. I didn't even read your fucking paper.
It means I understand how your ideas go together. It doesn't even mean I think that logic is necessarily good. It just means, okay, I get it. I think it...
Yeah, what a pile of crap. Again, who with any kind of integrity would play that kind of patronizing game? Who? Oh, let's just end the conversation by me saying something silly like, well, I'm right and you're wrong, but I'll say I understand in there. Now, I haven't said I'm right and you're wrong, because I don't have the guts to say that. I don't have the balls to say that, because I know you're going to come back with, well, what about the fact that you have it wrong?
if I was to guess how you would think about some new subject that was similar, I could guess because now I understand the logic.
Well, what you can't do is make a coherent argument, again, debunking a single fucking thing I've said. With a little bit of evidence.
And that's what the skeptics really have done in history. It turns out that's a hobby of skeptics. Like,
yeah, right. Wasting people's time with "I understand." That means fuck you. I think you're full of shit. Because I can't even use language consistently. That's part of the whole problem. I made that accusation before. There's no point in having words if they're not going to mean anything.
you know, Sextus Empiricus was a skeptic, but he wrote down what he learned about Stoics and Epicureans, and a lot of what we know is from him. And he put it in a way that they would.
A lot of what we know? I don't think so. I don't think a millionth of a percent of what I know came from him.
Would agree with. So as a skeptic, the danger is you can create any idea you want to create. You can think whatever you
Where's
want.
that music coming from?
Yeah, well, no point in asking the question. Maybe it'll end soon enough. But it's probably Piro's background because somebody else is making noise. But anyway, I don't know why Mr. Natural is agreeing with this slop. Let's make all the words mean nothing.
Oh, let me show you.
Wait, you thought it was me?
I thought it was
You
Mark.
can think, so just to finish, you can think whatever you want. But the problem is, a skeptic is like, okay, now I can think whatever I want. I have the same problem.
I mean, wow, you have to be a skeptic to think whatever you want. The point is whether you're rational or not, and you obey rules of reason to add facts together. If you don't have to reasonably evaluate facts, combine them, without being a hypocrite or inconsistent, yeah, then you're an asshole. And that's pretty much, you've sort of put yourself in the dictionary definition of it, you inconsistent slob. You're not a thinker, you're a pretender.
I started out with because I don't know necessarily what I should want to think.
I don't know what I should want to think. There you go, right there, right? I mean, the thinking should create the wanting.
So, but really, I wish in these conversations that, you know, we could take that approach that.
Oh, yeah, what approach? All you do is slander people. You have a room, you're in control of the room, and you waste 2 fucking hours not making any counter arguments at all, not explaining how somebody is wrong, not explaining how they are wrong, what details make them wrong, just assassinating their character. You stupid petty piece of shit. Did you learn that from Epicurus and all these other fuckheads? How to just be a lying scum character assassin?
We're just trying to understand, like, I would like to be able to make model ships of your ideas, right?
Yeah, well, see, where does this even come from? I'd like to make model ships of your ideas on cupcake flavors. Oh, okay, yeah, make a model ship of the cupcake. Okay, cool. Go waste your time, asshole. You know, why don't you draw pictures in cat poo? I mean, it's just, yeah, go ahead, waste your time, asshole.
Like little models. It's like, hey, Vic would go, yeah, that's what I believe.
Piro, let me
Awesome.
Can I ask something real quick though? Sorry.
Okay, wait, yeah.
This is kind of
Yeah, what the fuck? Why don't you say, what the fuck was that drivel about?
off topic, but Hero, whatever happened to your map idea?
Well, it still runs, and I'd like to get back to it, but I haven't had time to work on it in a couple of years.
Piro, I have a question for you. So, are you familiar with Miles Mathis?
I've installed
Yeah, Miles Mathis. Let's see what he says about him. That would be interesting.
well, I could add to that. I've installed Open Maps now, which is like the open source version of Google Maps. The open source version of Google Maps, and I'm trying to make the same thing in there.
Cool.
That I was working on about 5 months ago.
Yeah, well, it's longer than that, but whatever, doesn't matter.
So Piro, are you familiar with this guy Miles Mathis that Gary often loves to? He loves to write.
Not
his
familiar, no. No.
Okay.
I love to do something with, I mean, I haven't mentioned his name in months because he hasn't published anything. Okay, so, and the obsession is what? What? I don't even understand. He loves to, I can't even understand. I've basically pointed out when the guy makes sense and when the guy doesn't. I don't even understand how could he make an argument out of the Miles Mathis thing? I just don't even know how you make an argument out of that. I'm impressed. The guy's an impressive human being, a Renaissance man kind of thing. But I haven't said he's right about it, particularly right about some general understanding of the universe.
Well, I did a little bit of searching on this guy. Now, this guy, to a layman, he seems very knowledgeable, right? But
to a layman, he seems very knowledgeable. I mean, I think to anybody who reads his papers, you got to concede he's thought about these subjects and has a knowledge on these subjects. Fuck.
You actually listen to his interaction with other people who are in the know, people who are physicists and physics students, stuff like that.
All right, well, this is all just Vic's characterization. So again, I don't even, Vic isn't a fair cop, so why am I listening to him?
It's obvious to them that he is a crackpot. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Okay, so the establishment doesn't like the anti-establishment guy. Yeah, he's an anti-establishment guy. He thinks Einstein got a lot of shit wrong. He thinks Bohr got shit wrong. He thinks a lot of people have a lot of shit wrong. And he makes good arguments about some of these things on these complex subjects, like what makes a plane fly or something else. But the arguments stand on their own. They're good arguments. I mean, there's some places where he's, where he says something where, it's not provable or disprovable. But they're good arguments.
But when you actually read his papers, and he writes a lot of them, and these are like with math and everything, so the guy is knowledgeable when it comes to
Right, so you just said he was an idiot, and now you're saying he's knowledgeable. So, make up your mind.
physics. But he's a crackpot.
Okay, he's a crackpot. Why? Because he injects God into it? Why is he a crackpot? Bohr thought we are projecting the universe. He believed in God. I mean, Bohr believed in God. Do you think that's not kind of crackpot physics? I mean, a physicist who believes in God, I mean, isn't that crackpot right on the surface? He can't even get fucking fact one right?
And that's pretty much the consensus among people who are in the know.
Well, again, the consensus among the people in the know, which is the ones cranking against Miles Mathis, right? Those are the people you read, obviously, right? Those are the people you think know are the people who hate him. Yeah, so the haters are the ones that are going to dictate the fair opinion. So it's just like some 4 old ladies, write letters to NBC saying, I don't like that I could almost see a nipple through that woman's dress, and therefore there's too many nipples being seen through dresses because 4 old ladies say so. I mean, you really are just such an asshole, Vic.
Now, so Gary looks up to this guy because he rejects all this stuff too, with like.
I don't know. Looking up. No, I don't really do that. All I'm saying is, man, the guy writes really well, prolifically, and technically, it's good stuff. It's a good read if you like science.
The double slit experiment, he rejects all that stuff. So Gary loves this guy.
Again, I don't love this guy because he's wrong. I mean, you want me to show you the email I sent to him? I mean, I wasn't trying to join his club. I was trying to get him to join my club.
So this is the type of mentality that I'm talking about here. Is people are so easily impressed by people who throw around buzzwords, who have...
So again, somehow there's some element of what I've argued that I got from Miles Mathis. That somehow I'm saying to you people, or I've said in some video somewhere, wow, I would have never thought of that if Miles Mathis didn't say it. I learned so much from him. Or he knows, and when he says so, I believe it because he said so. Is that realistic? Does anybody believe that happened besides Vic, who doesn't believe it? He's just making the accusation because it's derogatory, because it's so easy to just throw mud. You don't have to do anything at all.
Seem to have some sort of knowledge.
I mean, pedophiles do like to dress up like this. Statistically, I'm sure it's a fact that of all the people who dress up like that, pedophiles do it more than any other category of human being, especially among white males.
The physics to laymen like me and others, but to people who are in the know, it's clear that they're full of shit. They don't know what.
Okay, so there's the standard. Again, the Pope says, the bishops say, people in the know, whatever that means in physics. So if 50% of the physicists go with Copenhagen and only 20% are many worlds, that means Copenhagen wins and we can all just shut up. Finally. Because the in the know has been decided.
What the fuck they're talking about. So, what is your response to that? How do you deal with that?
Again, you're not dealing with the argument. Mr. Natural asked you a simple question. Do you have some counter argument to say it's not possible that gravity could be a particle?
How do you get people to not give people like that so much credence?
And again, I gave him credence in what way? I don't even understand. Did I read his papers and the videos? Did I say, what did I do? Exactly explain exactly this thing called credence. Besides saying he makes some good arguments.
They're not
really
getting much
think of
credence
things
to
that
begin
way.
with.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really worry much about that because I think that
some people believe it.
I don't see that as affecting academia, even though some of the people with the crazy ideas are in academia. Some people would...
Well, there you go. At least that's a concession. Yes, some of them are crazy. Yeah. That might be a problem.
say Tom Campbell's ideas were that way, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. A physicist who believes in ESP, yeah, well, I'd say, sorry. You're just not getting it. I mean, there's a fundamental incompatibility. You really can't play along because you're not accepting the premise.
Okay, because tenure and the processes of academia can handle that. It doesn't create a fad. So, I just looked up, I'm going to look up because I do remember the name.
This guy writes tons of scientific papers, but they're all...
Well, like I say, he really hasn't. In the last year, he's only written 3, and they really weren't very good. I mean, one of them wasn't even his paper. He published some other guy's paper on the whole gravitational wave thing, and that paper wasn't very good.
None of them are peer-reviewed. It's just his...
The greatest standing errors.
Well, again, peer review, where do you get this? How do you acquire this peer review? You don't have to pay for it now, and from some obscure publication. And if there was some guarantee that you were going to get it, I'd say that's fine. But they don't give you a fair contract. They don't say, look, you pay us the money, we'll have a professional read your paper and make an argument. But that doesn't happen. You pay the money and they can decide to just say, fuck you.
This is a guy who thinks that pi is actually the number 4. I mean, that's how crazy his views are. Yeah, he's got a...
Well, again, you're not really arguing his position, so you're just saying it's crazy. Now, I don't think he writes papers that sometimes are just plain that. They're crazy. They're just a waste of time. He wrote a paper on just saying Hawking died 15 years ago or something, and they replaced him with a robot. So he said lots of things are silly.
A lot of crazy crap.
I mean, maybe some of those are jokes. Who the fuck knows? But I'm just saying, yeah, okay, that's a problem. But again, I'm just giving you. I'm just being a fair cop. Okay, the guy read his shit and go through it, and then show me in some of these papers where he's a crank or he's stupid, because he's not.
I gotta move tomorrow and pack, so I'm gonna leave the room open though. And I've given some of you.
When you move, make sure to know in advance where you want to put it. Saves you half the time, literally.
I know. That's very true. You gotta.
Whatever. Know where you're gonna put it.
Label every box where it's going.
Mr. Natural, I'd like to
you mean like what? Pots and pans go in the kitchen? How would this even be confusing? When you move, label. The bed goes in the bedroom. Oh, okay. I was confused.
I'd like to get your opinion on this, Mr. Natural, about people who present themselves as though they're scholars or experts when in...
Well, who cares? I mean, Mr. Natural has quite an ego. Clearly you do, Vic, but who cares? It's about the argument. If you can't make an argument and you can't counter-argue, who cares who's making the argument? Again, this whole messenger crap, see? So that's another one of these fallacy... What's the point, Vic? What's the point of your argument? You think somehow I have cheated somebody because I've made an argument. And somehow, what, I shouldn't be allowed to make an argument? That you got some demonstration, again, that I have violated some rules of making arguments, like I used propaganda, or I used fake evidence, or I drew with magic pencils that brainwash people. I mean, your argument is vacuous. The fact that you can't make a reasoned counter-argument doesn't make me evil. And clearly, I haven't shoved pigeons up my sleeve. I'm not sitting there walking up to you going, bent space, dark matter, you know, Huygens.
Fact, to the people who are in the know, they're actually anything but. Right? But to a layman like we are, they seem like they're experts because we can't distinguish a person who's talking sense and a person who's talking nonsense.
All right. Well, if you can't distinguish, then again, you are kind of irrelevant, then, aren't you? So, yes, so that if that's all you can do is say, I can't think about evolution and religion, it's too complicated. I'm not going to do any research to figure out that evolution is science and religion is fantasy. You know, I'm just saying, that's your problem, asshole. I mean, if you can't make those distinctions, then that's your problem, asshole. And if you want to say you have complete faith in Richard Feynman or Albert Einstein or Bohr, even though they don't agree with each other, but you have faith in all of them as a collective somehow, whatever that would even mean. Because Bohr believes in God. Do you believe in God? I don't know. I mean, this is a stupid, irrational way to argue about your responsibility to have competence before you open your fucking mouth. You're the one saying that you can tell the difference. Beyond saying, they're authorities. That's all we need to know. It's the president. The president knows everything. The president's brilliant. The president's good. There's no such thing as a bad president. Huh?
Sense because we're not familiar with the...
I don't have that problem personally, actually.
Okay.
I don't.
I know.
Because I have a different attitude than you, obviously, but I don't because it's you know, you have to confront them about the facts and you have to see how they go about things, and after you do that, it becomes easier, you know?
Well, whatever, the concession that you're a layman, projecting what? Your layman knowledge of who's qualified to talk physics. Oh, okay. Gee. All right. Well, that's, I mean, really, enough said. But really, there's no, right, there's just no, it goes on and on and on, and there's not a single counter argument based on some established fact that discredits any conversation in this direction. He's just talking like I'm saying the world is flat, or aliens, took over Earth 400 years ago and replaced, all of us with, cybernetic organisms. So we're not really living things. We're mechanical robots, and our real duplicate, real person, are still living on, Venetia. Now, you want to argue that's what I'm doing? Go ahead and argue it, but fuck you, that's bullshit. Scummy shithead. I mean, all these people, like I said, collectively, they can't come up with a counter argument. All they can do is rag.